You're with Julian on the Brown Notes and why Donald Trump is losing the Senate and the madness of King Trump. A brief look at what's been going on, the madness since the election victory for Joe Biden. Now, firstly, there's absolutely no possibility in any voter fraud, any widespread voter fraud. It's a complete fallacy. And we said before the 2016 election and before this election, if Trump loses, he will scream widespread voter fraud to try and delegitimize the result. Interesting that last time, the only thing he had a fraud with was the fact that he lost the popular vote by 3 million, and he claimed that was fraudulent. But he didn't claim that anything else that gave him victory was fraudulent. So far, he's had 10 court case verdicts in the courts over this election and lost all 10. I thought there was a funny joke I saw online. Trump's lawyer goes to court saying, Your Honour, I believe there to be widespread voter fraud, and the judge says, and what is your evidence? And the lawyer says, that was it. So they don't have any. And some people it's generally designed to promote the notion that it could happen and to promote the get the base riled up, which is incredibly dangerous, as we know. We're probably not too far away from guns making a more regular appearance at voting stations, and they've already made some. But there isn't any. Some people are saying, well, the Supreme Court's been stacked for Trump to get involved in the election. What happened in 2000 and now compared? In 2000, one state, Florida, decided the whole election. This time, there's about 4 states difference. In Florida in 2000, 550 votes separated Al Gore and George Bush Jr. This time we're talking about multiple states with 10,000 vote margins. It's not remotely similar. And the other thing is, the Supreme Court got involved in 2000 to stop the vote, to stop the recount, not to start one. There is no way that the Supreme Court is going to get involved and say that 4 states all have to have recounts. The average amount of voter change in a recount is less than 200 votes. So that's never going to happen, and there isn't any evidence of voter fraud. They're just saying it. But what is really disturbing is he seems to be trying to do a coup, which we suggested and didn't quite believe he'd go to that extreme. But it does seem to be that he's gearing up. Just before I came on air, the latest spokesperson for Donald Trump was on the news giving a live telecast, and Fox News cut her off after 30 seconds of relentless, unfounded allegations that the Democrats were pursuing voter fraud, and they just cut her straight off. So what we're seeing is they're digging in, and I thought there were 2 things. A narcissist needs to define a situation where they're not the loser, where it's everyone else's fault, and then they walk away. I've had it in my own personal life. A narcissist will walk away from a situation and never look back because they've already defined that they aren't the problem, everyone else is. So I thought that might be the case here, and that Trump is still going to, give it a few days of raging and he'll step down. And he'll just spend the rest of his life saying that the whole world was conspiring against him and it was fraud because he needs that mentally as a narcissistic sociopath. The other side is the much more dangerous one. We all said that he would try and be a fascist dictator and lead a coup and take over America and cancel elections. It is possible at this stage that he is intending to do that he is intending to throw so much mud at what's gone on and get every single legal apparatus that he can control as president to try and stop the changeover happening. How that will play out is going to be much more dangerous. I thought that the win for Biden was so big, and a lot of people are saying, it wasn't that big, but in reality it could have come down to 1 state, and it didn't. It's a much bigger margin than a lot of people suspected it would be. 6 million on the popular vote at least. 6 states that voted Republican switching to Democrat, and in those states we're not talking about 550 votes, we're sometimes talking about 20 or 30,000 votes. So they may have been close, but it's just too big a margin. So I thought that would take the wind out of the sails of what's going on, but he seems to only be gearing up. Now, I don't foresee that any of this will have any impact. I'm not reading any of the conspiracy theories about the voter fraud because I don't need to. It's not real. Come and tell me when a vote is changed, then I'll look at it. But until then, it's just hot air. It is more worrying about the whole thing if he's trying to actually interfere in the process and stop things happening because he's still got the president's power. That is a bit more of a worry. I've seen people saying he might well try and delay everything and just cling to power and try and get the Electoral College to vote with him. So what could happen there is he will delay official results from states, so the Electoral College, when they meet, won't have those official results. They'll just be going on the announced results. Have you noticed how his fans always parrot the same lines? The media doesn't decide elections. They're all starting parroting exactly the same line at the same time. It's really scary. If he gets to that point, he might try and bully the Electoral College into giving him the results that he tells them that he's got. And that would be really bizarre. It would be pretty much the end of democracy as we know it in America. But the reason I did this piece anyway, I'm sure you've heard enough about the election, is Donald Trump is currently losing the Senate. Now, the biggest thing in these elections is always the House and the Senate, because it doesn't matter how much you win by. Policy goes through the House and then it goes on to be ratified by the Senate. Same as the two-house system that we have, or the Westminster system, I think it's called, that we have in the UK and Australia, where rich people still get to say, where one side can stop the other doing, things that are too outrageous just because they've got power. So the Senate for the Republicans to block any progressive activity is hugely important. Now that has come down, ironically, to a runoff on January the 5th between two Senate places in Georgia. The one most surprising flip from Republican after 30 years to Democrat, and by a healthy margin now, I think over 6,000 votes. They are the one state that has announced a recount, but they announced that recount when it was only a few hundred votes in it, so I'm not quite sure what's going to happen there. But there is going to be a Senate runoff on January the 5th. Those two Democrats, if they win, will tip the balance to the Senate being equal, and then it goes to Kamala Harris being the deciding vote. So, in essence, the Democrats will win the Senate. Donald Trump's losing that vote. Now, imagine this. If Donald Trump had been gracious in defeat, that previously Republican state of Georgia, those voters may well have said, okay, Trump's gone, Biden's in, that's fair, but let's keep control of the Senate. Let's make that Republican, just to put some checks and balances on the Democrats. But him thrashing around like a cut snake, the way that he's doing, you're going to be in a position in January where the public will be heartily sick of him and what he's doing. And the Republican Party, people like Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, are supporting him through this process. And if it drags on, imagine those voters in Georgia. They're not going to be feeling benevolent towards the Republican Party or Donald Trump. They're not going to want that Republican Party to have control of the Senate. They'll be 3 weeks away from Joe Biden's inauguration, and they will have this wave of optimism building around Joe Biden going to the polls. They're going to lose the Senate on the way that Donald Trump is behaving right now, because there will be a wave of optimism projected towards Joe Biden coming in and a wave of negativity towards the way that Donald Trump's behaving at the moment, which I expect to drag on for weeks. So he is losing the most important crown jewel that the Republicans have left, which is the Senate. And it is pretty disturbing that that can come down to one vote in a tied Senate. I think the one thing that has really surprised everyone about this election, the last 4 years, the amazing behaviour of Donald Trump, how offensive, how racist, how sexist, the corruption, the way that he's treated staff, the way that he's bullied people, the amazingly ineffectual behaviour towards the coronavirus pandemic, which is probably going to kill 500,000 Americans by the end of the year. None of it mattered to the Trump voters. None of it mattered at all. That is really disturbing. I said about the ScoMo election in Australia, how the last 6 years before that election of appalling behaviour, sacking leaders, declining economic fortunes, none of it mattered. And we now have a really solid, rusted on right-wing vote that will vote for these people. It doesn't matter how bad they are. That's scary, and the only thing we can do is outnumber them. And thank God we outnumbered them this time.